The morning sun shone bright over Seoul Spaceport as Kang Ho adjusted his dark blue uniform. He had been a soldier for 10 years before becoming a diplomat. Today felt different from any mission he had ever faced. Today, aliens were coming to Earth. Park Soo stood next to him, holding a tablet full of notes about alien biology. She had studied every piece of information Earth had received about these visitors. Her hands shook slightly as she checked her equipment one more time. "Are you nervous?" Kang Ho asked her. "A little," Park Soo admitted. "We know so little about them. They call themselves the Mindari. They say they speak for something called the Galactic Council." Lee Na walked up to them, her security badge gleaming on her chest. She had 20 armed guards positioned around the landing area. "The alien ship is coming down now," she reported. "It's huge. Much bigger than we expected." The three humans looked up at the sky. A massive silver ship descended slowly through the clouds. It was shaped like a giant triangle with smooth edges. No engines could be seen, but it moved silently through the air. When it landed, the ground shook slightly under its weight. "Remember the plan?" Kang Ho said quietly. "We greet them with respect, but we don't bow or kneel. We are equals in this meeting." A door opened on the side of the alien ship. Bright light poured out, making it hard to see inside. Then figures began to walk out. The aliens were tall, much taller than humans. They had pale gray skin and long arms that reached almost to their knees. Their heads were larger than human heads, with big dark eyes that seemed to look right through everything. The leader of the aliens stepped forward. He wore robes made of shimmering material that changed colors as he moved. His face showed no emotion as he looked at the humans waiting for him. "I am Veltar of the Mindari," the alien said. His voice sounded strange, like it was coming from inside their heads rather than from his mouth. "I speak for the Galactic Council. We have come to evaluate your species." Kang Ho stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "Welcome to Earth. I am Kang Ho, representing the United Earth Government. This is Park Soo, our science advisor, and Lee Na, our security chief." Veltar looked at each human carefully. His dark eyes seemed to study every detail of their faces and bodies. "Your species is young," he said. "You have only just learned to leave your planet. The Council has watched you for some time. We are honored by your visit," Kang Ho replied. "We hope this can be the beginning of friendship between our peoples." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and sharp. "Friendship is not why we are here, human. We are here to determine what role your species will play in the galactic order." More aliens had gathered behind Veltar. They all looked similar, with the same gray skin and large eyes. Some carried devices that looked like weapons, though they kept them at their sides. Park Soo noticed that none of the aliens seemed to speak to each other out loud. They would look at each other for a moment and then nod or move without saying anything. "Telepathy," she whispered to Kang Ho. "They can read each other's minds." Veltar heard her whisper and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Yes, human scientist. We are telepathic. It is one of the gifts that makes us superior to lesser species. We can see into the minds of other beings and understand their thoughts." "That must be very useful," Kang Ho said carefully. "It is more than useful," Veltar replied. "It is how we maintain order in the galaxy. When we can see what other beings are thinking, they cannot lie to us. They cannot hide their intentions. They cannot resist our will." Lee Na felt a chill run down her spine. These aliens were not here as friends. They were here as conquerors. "Before we proceed," Veltar announced, "I must perform the standard evaluation protocol. I will read the mind of your leader to assess your species' intelligence and determine your value to the Council." Kang Ho felt his heart start beating faster. "What does that involve?" "I will place my hand on your head and look into your thoughts," Veltar explained. "It is a simple procedure. I have done it with leaders of dozens of species across the galaxy. Do not worry. If your thoughts are too primitive, the process will be quick." The other aliens moved closer, forming a circle around the humans. Lee Na's hand moved toward her weapon, but Kang Ho caught her eye and shook his head slightly. They could not afford to start a fight they could not win. "I understand," Kang Ho said. "Please proceed." Veltar stepped closer to the human diplomat. Up close, Kang Ho could see that the alien's skin was not smooth like it appeared from a distance. It had a pattern of tiny scales that caught the light. Veltar's eyes were completely black with no visible iris or pupil. "Remain still," Veltar commanded. "Some species find the mental contact uncomfortable." The alien raised his long, thin hands. His fingers were longer than human fingers, with an extra joint that made them bend in strange ways. He placed his fingertips gently against Kang Ho's forehead. Kang Ho felt a strange tingling sensation where the alien touched him. It started as a light pressure, then grew stronger. He could sense something trying to push into his mind, like fingers trying to open a door. Veltar closed his large dark eyes and concentrated. He had done this procedure hundreds of times before. Usually, he could see into an alien mind within seconds. The thoughts of most species were organized and simple. They thought about one thing at a time, in clear patterns that were easy to read and control. But as Veltar tried to enter Kang Ho's mind, something felt wrong. Instead of the organized thoughts he expected, he encountered something else entirely. It was like trying to walk into what he thought was a quiet library, and instead finding himself in the middle of a thunderstorm. Human thoughts, Veltar discovered, were nothing like the thoughts of other species. Kang Ho's mind was not thinking about one thing at a time. He was thinking about dozens of things simultaneously. Part of his mind was focused on the alien touching him, but other parts were thinking about his breakfast that morning, a song he had heard on the radio, whether his uniform looked professional, a memory of his childhood dog, calculations about the alien ship's size, worry about Lena's safety, and a random wondering about what the weather would be like tomorrow. All of these thoughts were happening at the same time, layered on top of each other like a symphony with too many instruments playing different songs. But that was not the worst part. Each thought was connected to emotions, and those emotions were connected to memories, and those memories were connected to more thoughts, creating an endless web of mental activity that seemed to have no beginning or end. Veltar tried to push deeper, to find the center of Kang Ho's consciousness, but there was no center. There was only chaos. Beautiful, terrifying, overwhelming chaos. The human mind was like a storm that never ended, constantly creating new thoughts and ideas and feelings in a pattern that made no sense to the alien's telepathic abilities. The alien tried to pull back, but Kang Ho's thoughts seemed to follow him. Images flooded Veltar's mind. Memories of human wars. Human love, human art, human dreams, human fears, all mixed together in a whirlwind of consciousness that his telepathic brain could not process. Veltar's eyes snapped open. His face showed pure terror. He tried to remove his hands from Kang Ho's head, but for a moment he could not move. The human's mental chaos had paralyzed his telepathic abilities. When he finally pulled his hands away, Veltar stumbled backward. His mouth opened wide and a scream came out that was unlike any sound the humans had ever heard. It was high-pitched and sharp, filled with pain and fear. The scream was so loud and piercing that the windows of nearby buildings cracked. The alien ambassador's legs gave out under him. He collapsed to the ground, his large eyes rolling back in his head. His body convulsed once, then went completely still. The other aliens rushed to their leader's side, their faces showing the first emotions the humans had seen from them: confusion and panic. Kang Ho stood perfectly still, unsure of what had just happened. Park Soo and Lee Na ran to his side. "Are you okay?" Lee Na asked. "I think so," Kang Ho replied, though he felt strangely dizzy. What happened to him? None of them knew the answer to that question. They only knew that the most powerful telepath in the galaxy had touched a human mind and screamed in terror before falling unconscious. The aliens carried their unconscious leader back toward their ship, casting fearful glances at the humans as they retreated. The first contact between Earth and the Galactic Council had not gone as anyone expected. Something about human minds was different, something that had never been encountered before in the galaxy, and that difference had just changed everything. 3 hours had passed since Veltar collapsed on the landing pad. The alien leader now lay in the medical bay of his ship, connected to strange machines that hummed softly. His eyes were open, but they stared at nothing. When other aliens tried to speak to him, he only whispered the same words over and over. Too much. Too much. Too much. Kim Jun, the Mindari medic, had never seen anything like this before. He was the best healer in their fleet, trained to fix injuries to both body and mind, but Veltar's condition was beyond anything in his medical knowledge. "What happened to him?" asked Nix Ara, the military commander of the alien fleet. Her voice carried the authority of someone used to getting answers. "I do not know," Kim Jun admitted. "His brain shows patterns I have never seen. It is as if his telepathic abilities have been burned out." Outside the alien ship, human officials were gathering. News of the incident had spread quickly through Earth's government. Everyone wanted to know what had gone wrong with the first contact. Choi Min, a human psychologist, had been called to the spaceport to help understand what happened. She studied the footage of the incident over and over, watching Veltar's face change from confidence to terror in the span of seconds. Something about Kang Ho's mind caused this reaction, she told the assembled officials. But what could a human thought pattern do to harm an alien telepath? Park Soo had been thinking the same question. She had spent years studying human brain patterns and knew how complex they could be, but she had never imagined that complexity could be dangerous to another species. "We need to understand what Veltar experienced," Park Soo said. "If we can figure out what happened, maybe we can prevent it from happening again." Meanwhile, on the alien ship, Kim Jun was trying a different approach. He decided to attempt a very light telepathic contact with Veltar's mind, hoping to understand what had damaged his leader so severely. As soon as Kim Jun made mental contact, he saw flashes of what Veltar had experienced. The images came in broken pieces like fragments of a shattered mirror. But what he saw made his hands shake. He saw the moment when Veltar first touched Kang Ho's mind. At first, there had been the normal sensation of making telepathic contact. Then, like diving into what looked like a calm lake only to discover it was actually a raging waterfall, Veltar had been hit by the full force of human consciousness. Kim Jun saw what human thoughts looked like to a telepathic mind. Where Mindari thoughts moved in clean, straight lines, human thoughts moved like water in a hurricane. Kang Ho had been thinking about the meeting with the aliens, but he was also thinking about 17 other things at the same time. The human was worried about making a good impression, but he was also remembering his mother's advice about standing up straight. He was calculating how many aliens were in the group, but he was also wondering if he had turned off his coffee maker that morning. Part of his mind was planning what to say next, while another part was humming a song he had heard on the radio. But that was just the surface. Deeper in Kang Ho's mind, more layers of thought were active. He was unconsciously monitoring the sounds around him, the temperature of the air, the feeling of his clothes against his skin. His brain was running dozens of background processes that kept his body functioning, while also maintaining awareness of his environment. Even deeper, his mind held memories that were not quite conscious but still active. The smell of the alien ship had reminded him of a hospital where his grandfather had died, which connected to feelings about mortality, which led to thoughts about what his life meant, which branched into philosophical questions about existence itself. All of these thoughts and feelings and memories were happening simultaneously, connected to each other in a web so complex that it had no beginning or end, and every single thread in that web was colored by emotions that humans took for granted, but that alien minds found incomprehensible. Kim Jun pulled back from the mental contact, gasping. Now he understood why Veltar had screamed. The human mind was not just different from what they had expected. It was fundamentally alien to every telepathic species in the galaxy. "Commander Nexara," Kim Jun called weakly, "you need to hear this." When the military commander arrived, Kim Jun explained what he had discovered. The human mind operates in a way we have never encountered, where our thoughts move in organized patterns. Human thoughts exist in constant chaos. They think about many things at once all the time. That should make them easier to control, not harder, Nexara replied. Confused minds are weak minds. No, Kim Jun said, shaking his head. You do not understand. It is not confusion. It is complexity. Their brains process information in parallel streams that our telepathic abilities cannot follow. When Veltar tried to read the human's mind, it was like trying to drink from a waterfall. Back on Earth, scientists were coming to similar conclusions. Choi Min had been studying human brain scans and comparing them to what little information they had about alien brain patterns. Look at this, she told Park Soo, pointing to brain scan images on her computer screen. This is a human brain during normal activity. See how many different areas are active at the same time. Park Soo studied the colorful brain scan. Nearly every section of the brain was lit up with activity. It looks like the person is doing dozens of different mental tasks simultaneously. Exactly, Choi Min said. But this person was just sitting quietly in a chair, supposedly relaxing. Humans never truly think about just one thing. Our brains are constantly running multiple processes. making connections, creating associations, generating random thoughts. She pulled up another image. Now look at this brain scan from one of the alien species we studied last year. See the difference? The alien brain scan showed activity in only a few specific areas. The pattern was clean and organized like a computer running a single program. Their brains are efficient, Park Soo observed. They focus on one task at a time and complete it before moving to the next, which makes them very good at telepathy, Choi Min explained. When you try to read a mind that thinks in organized patterns, it's easy. But human minds are chaos, Park Soo finished. Meanwhile, Kang Ho was being examined by human doctors to make sure the telepathic contact had not harmed him. He felt fine, though he kept having odd flashes of memory that did not seem to belong to him. I keep seeing images of places I've never been, he told the doctor. Strange buildings, alien landscapes, and I hear voices speaking in languages I don't understand. The doctor made notes on his chart. The telepathic contact may have left some residual effects. The alien's mind might have leaked some of its own memories into yours during the connection. But Kang Ho was less concerned about himself than about what had happened to Veltar. Is he going to be okay? I didn't mean to hurt him. We don't know yet, the doctor admitted. The aliens won't let our medical team examine him. On the alien ship, more Mindari telepaths were attempting to understand what had happened to their leader. One by one, they tried to make light contact with Veltar's damaged mind, hoping to heal him or at least understand his condition. Each attempt ended the same way. The moment they touched the residual chaos that Kang Ho's mind had left behind, they experienced the same overwhelming storm of human thought patterns. Most pulled back immediately, but a few were caught in the mental maelstrom long enough to suffer minor damage themselves. This is impossible, Nexara said after the fifth telepath had to be sedated. How can contact with a single human mind be so destructive to our most powerful telepaths? Kim Jun had been thinking about that question for hours. Commander, I believe the problem is not with our telepaths. The problem is with our understanding of consciousness itself. He activated a holographic display that showed brain patterns from dozens of different species. Look at these scans. Every telepathic species in the galaxy has evolved similar brain structures. We all think in organized linear patterns. That is why we can read each other's minds so easily. The display shifted to show human brain patterns, but humans evolved differently. Their planet was more dangerous, more chaotic. They needed to be aware of many threats at once while also planning for the future and remembering the past. Their brains developed the ability to process multiple streams of consciousness simultaneously. You are saying their mental chaos is an evolutionary adaptation? Nexara asked. I am saying their mental chaos is their strength, Kim Jun replied, and it makes them immune to our telepathic abilities. Back on Earth, similar conversations were taking place. Military officials were beginning to understand the implications of what had happened. If alien telepaths cannot read human minds, General Yunhai said during an emergency meeting, then their primary weapon against us is useless. But we don't know how many of them there are, Lena pointed out. They might have other weapons. They might, agreed Bei Wan, the military strategist. But their entire civilization seems to be built around telepathic control. If they can't control us mentally, they lose their biggest advantage. As the day continued, more pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to find another species they could easily dominate through telepathic control. Instead, they had discovered a species whose minds were so chaotic and complex that telepathic contact was not only impossible, but actually dangerous to the telepath. News of what happened at Seoul Spaceport spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The Galactic Council had communication networks that connected thousands of worlds, and within hours, every telepathic species knew that something had gone terribly wrong during first contact with the humans. On the Mindari homeworld, the High Council gathered in emergency session. These ancient beings had ruled their part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years through telepathic dominance. Never before had they encountered a species that could harm their telepaths simply by being touched. This must be some kind of weapon, declared Elder Morthak, the oldest member of the council. The humans have developed a mental defense system. No, replied Elder Vesicina, who had been studying the reports from the Earth mission. Our analysis suggests this is natural. The human brain evolved to function this way. The council chamber fell silent. The idea that a species could naturally resist telepathic control challenged everything they believed about the order of the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth, scientists were working around the clock to understand what made human minds so different. Yoon Hai, the lead neuroscientist, had gathered the best researchers from around the world to study the phenomenon. "We need to test this further," she announced during a meeting in Seoul. "If human minds are truly immune to telepathic control, we need to understand exactly how and why." Bae Won, who had been coordinating with military leaders worldwide, raised a concern. "The aliens are still here. Their ship hasn't left orbit. We don't know what they're planning next." "That's exactly why we need more information," replied Lee Da, a philosopher who had been brought in to help understand the implications of the discovery. "If our minds work differently from every other species in the galaxy, that could change everything about how we interact with alien civilizations." The team decided to conduct careful experiments. They would need volunteers willing to attempt telepathic contact with other aliens in the delegation. It was dangerous, but the information was crucial for Earth's survival. Kang Ho volunteered immediately. "I've already been through it once," he said. "If my mind can help protect Earth, I'm willing to risk it again." But first, they needed to convince the aliens to participate. That meant negotiating with Commander Nexara, who had taken charge of the alien delegation while Veltar remained unconscious. The meeting took place in a neutral area between the human facility and the alien ship. Nexara brought 2 other Mindari telepaths with her, both of whom kept their distance from the humans. "Your species has injured our ambassador," Nexara said without any greeting. "The Galactic Council will want an explanation." "We didn't intend to hurt anyone," replied Jin, the human military commander who was leading the negotiations. "We want to understand what happened as much as you do. You expect us to believe this was an accident?" Nexara's large dark eyes showed suspicion. Shin Yu, the human tactical analyst, stepped forward. "Commander, with respect, if we had wanted to harm your people, would we have done it during a peaceful first contact? In front of witnesses? While recording everything?" Nexara considered this. The human had a point. If they had developed some kind of mental weapon, they would more likely have used it during an attack, not during a diplomatic meeting. "What do you propose?" she asked. "Controlled experiments," Jin explained. "We want to understand what makes human minds different from other species. To do that, we need volunteers from both sides willing to attempt very brief, very careful telepathic contact." "Absolutely not," one of the Mindari telepaths said immediately. "We have seen what human minds do to our people, which is exactly why we need to understand it," Ryu San, the human communications expert, pointed out. "If human minds are naturally harmful to telepaths, then every future contact between our species could result in injury. We need to find a safe way to interact." After much discussion, Nexara agreed to a limited series of experiments. The telepathic contact would be minimal, lasting only seconds, and would be monitored by both human and alien medical teams. The first test subject was Zethmore, a young Mindari telepath who specialized in what they called surface reading, touching only the most basic thoughts of other beings. He approached a human volunteer named Park Jun, a scientist who had been trained in meditation techniques to try to keep his thoughts as calm as possible, even with Park Jun trying to think about only one simple thing, the color blue. The result was immediate disaster. The moment Zethmore made telepathic contact, he staggered backward as if he had been hit by a physical blow. "Impossible," he gasped. "Even when the human tries to think of only one thing, there are dozens of other thoughts underneath. It's like trying to look at a single star when you're standing in front of the sun." The second test involved a different telepathic species altogether. The Grynel were insectoid beings who used telepathy primarily for communication within their hive-like societies. Their telepathic abilities were less powerful than those of the Mindari, so the humans hoped the reaction might be less severe. It wasn't. The Grynel telepath, a being called Click Whisper Dream, barely touched the human volunteer's mind before collapsing in convulsions. The alien's translator device produced sounds of distress that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "The human thoughts," Click Whisper Dream managed to say after recovering, "they move like angry swarms. No beginning, no end, no pattern. How do you live with such chaos in your heads?" The human volunteer, a mathematician named Kim Yu, shrugged. "It doesn't feel chaotic to us. It feels normal. That response troubled the aliens more than anything else they had heard. If humans considered their mental chaos to be normal, then their minds were even more alien than the telepaths had initially thought. As the experiments continued, patterns began to emerge. Every telepathic species that attempted to read human minds experienced the same reaction. Immediate overwhelming sensory overload followed by temporary or permanent damage to their telepathic abilities. But the humans were learning things too. Yunhai discovered that human brain patterns were not just chaotic, they were actively defensive. When telepathic contact was attempted, human minds seemed to generate even more random thoughts and connections, as if they were automatically protecting themselves. It's like our brains have a built-in immune system against mental intrusion, she explained to the research team. The moment something tries to force its way into our thoughts, we unconsciously create more mental noise to drive it out. This discovery fascinated Li Da, the philosopher. We've always thought of human creativity and imagination as positive traits, she said. But maybe they evolved as mental weapons. Maybe our ability to think about multiple things at once, to make random connections, to create art and music and stories. Maybe all of that developed to protect us from telepathic predators. Telepathic predators? Oh, Jin asked. Think about it, Li Da continued. Most animals on Earth have some form of camouflage or defensive mechanism. What if humans developed mental camouflage? What if our chaotic thinking patterns evolved to hide our real thoughts and intentions from mind readers? Meanwhile, word of the failed experiments was spreading through the Galactic Council. Species that had been planning to visit Earth began reconsidering. If the humans could disable telepaths just by being near them, then any contact with the species was potentially dangerous. But some aliens were reaching a different conclusion. On the world of the Kethnari, a species of skilled warriors who had never developed telepathic abilities, military leaders were studying the reports with great interest. These humans, said war leader Thaknor, they cannot be controlled by the mind readers. This makes them valuable allies against the Telepathic Alliance. The Telepathic Alliance was an informal group of species that used their mental abilities to dominate others. For centuries, non-telepathic species had been forced to serve as slaves or second-class citizens. But if humans were immune to telepathic control, they could change the balance of power in the galaxy. On Earth, military planners were coming to similar conclusions. If human minds were natural jamming devices against telepathy, then humans could serve as protectors for other species that wanted to break free from telepathic dominance. We're not just immune to their primary weapon, Baywan realized during a strategy meeting. We're a cure for it. Any species that wants to resist telepathic control could work with us. But first they had to survive the current crisis. The Galactic Council was still deciding what to do about the human situation. Some members wanted to destroy Earth before humans could spread their mental chaos to other worlds. Others wanted to study humans to understand how their immunity worked. A few were beginning to think that maybe the age of telepathic dominance was coming to an end. As the third day since first contact ended, Veltar finally spoke his first coherent words since collapsing. Kim Jun, who had been caring for him constantly, leaned in to hear what the ambassador would say. "The storm," Veltar whispered, his voice barely audible. "Their minds are a storm that never ends. We cannot read the wind. We cannot predict the lightning. We cannot survive the thunder, Kim Jun." 1 week had passed since the first failed telepathic contact, and the situation was escalating rapidly. Reports from across the galaxy indicated that the Galactic Council was split into 3 factions. Those who wanted to destroy Earth immediately, those who wanted to study humans, and those who were beginning to question the telepathic hierarchy that had ruled for millennia. On Earth, military leaders had been working non-stop to understand the full implications of humanity's telepathic immunity. Ojin stood in the command center, watching satellite feeds that showed alien ships gathering at the edge of the solar system. "How many ships?" he asked his aide. 47 at last count," replied Xin Yu, her voice tense. "Ships from at least 12 different species. It looks like half the galaxy is coming to see what humans can do." The alien delegation on Earth had grown as well. Commander Nexara had been joined by representatives from several other species, all of whom wanted to witness human mental abilities firsthand. But none of them were willing to risk direct telepathic contact after what had happened to their colleagues. Dr. Yunhai had been studying the alien visitors as much as they were studying humans. Her research had revealed something remarkable about how telepathic species thought and operated. They're incredibly predictable, she explained during a briefing with Earth's leaders. Their thoughts follow logical patterns that we can anticipate. When they make decisions, they do it step by step, considering one factor at a time. That sounds efficient, commented Ryu-san. It is efficient, Yun-hai agreed, but it's also limiting. They can't think creatively or adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Their mental efficiency comes at the cost of flexibility. Beiwan, the military strategist, was taking notes. So in a conflict situation, they would be strong in planned battles but weak in chaotic ones? Exactly, Yun-hai said. Human minds, with all their chaos and random connections, are actually superior for dealing with unpredictable situations. We can adapt, improvise, and think our way out of problems that would paralyze a more logical mind. This discovery was being put to the test in ongoing negotiations with the aliens. Every day, human diplomats met with alien representatives to discuss the future relationship between Earth and the Galactic Council. The humans were discovering that their chaotic thinking patterns gave them significant advantages in these talks. During one negotiation session, Elder Korvash of the Telepathic Alliance tried to use logical pressure to force the humans into accepting a subordinate role in galactic affairs. Your species is young and inexperienced, the alien argued. You have not even mastered travel between stars. You should be grateful for the opportunity to learn from your superiors. But Kang Ho, who had become Earth's lead negotiator, responded in a way that completely confused the alien. You're absolutely right that we're young, Kang Ho said. But that's exactly why we might have something valuable to offer. Sometimes fresh eyes can see solutions that experienced ones miss. Plus, our inexperience means we haven't learned that certain things are impossible, so we might try approaches that you wouldn't consider. Elder Korvash paused, trying to process this response. The human had agreed with his criticism but somehow turned it into an advantage. The alien's logical mind could not follow the reasoning. That makes no sense, Korvash finally said. Exactly, Kang Ho replied cheerfully. That's what makes us useful. This type of exchange happened repeatedly. Human negotiators would respond to alien logic with creative thinking that left their counterparts confused and off balance. The aliens were used to debates that followed predictable patterns. Human responses were like puzzle pieces that didn't fit into any known framework. Meanwhile, Li Da and her team of philosophers and psychologists were developing a deeper understanding of human consciousness. They had begun mapping the differences between human thought patterns and those of telepathic species. We think in metaphors, Li Da explained during a research presentation. When we solve problems, we don't just use logic. We use analogies, stories, emotional associations, and creative leaps. Our minds are constantly making connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. She showed brain scans from human test subjects who had been asked to solve simple problems. Look at this. When we asked a human to calculate the area of a circle, part of their brain was doing the math, but other parts were thinking about pizzas, wheels, the sun, and wedding rings. All of these associations were helping them understand and remember the concept. The aliens don't think like that, added Dr. Choi Min. When they calculate the area of a circle, they just do the math. No associations, no metaphors, no creative connections. It's faster, but it's also more limited. This research was helping Earth's military develop new strategies. If humans could confuse and overwhelm alien telepaths just by thinking normally, then human mental patterns could be used as a weapon. General Park Soo had been working with a team of military psychologists to develop what they called cognitive warfare techniques. The idea was to amplify the natural chaos of human thoughts and broadcast it in a way that would disable telepathic attackers. We've discovered that certain types of human mental activity are particularly harmful to telepaths, Park Soo explained to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Creative tasks, emotional processing, and especially something we call stream of consciousness thinking. Stream of consciousness was a mental state where humans let their thoughts flow freely, from one idea to another without trying to control or organize them. It was the type of thinking that happened during daydreaming or meditation, and it was apparently the most toxic thing a telepathic alien could encounter. We're training volunteers to enter this mental state on command, Park Soo continued. If we can coordinate hundreds or thousands of humans thinking in stream of consciousness mode simultaneously, We might be able to create a mental field that telepathic ships can't penetrate. The aliens in Earth's orbit were becoming increasingly agitated as they observed human activities. Nexara reported to the Galactic Council that the humans were not behaving like a typical pre-spaceflight species. They show no fear, she reported during a council transmission. Most species, when faced with superior alien technology, become submissive or desperate. But humans seem to be treating this as an interesting puzzle to solve. Perhaps they do not understand the danger they are in, suggested Elder Morthak. No, Nexara replied. They understand perfectly. They have calculated the odds against them, analyzed our technological advantages, and assessed their own weaknesses. But instead of despairing, they are looking for ways to turn their disadvantages into strengths. This human attitude was baffling to species that thought in purely logical terms. When faced with a problem they could not solve through conventional means, most species would either surrender or become paralyzed by fear. Humans did neither. They got creative. Evidence of human creativity was everywhere the aliens looked. Human engineers were already reverse engineering alien technology they had observed, not by copying it directly, but by understanding the principles behind it and finding new ways to achieve the same results. Human artists were creating works inspired by alien designs, but with distinctly human interpretations that no alien could have conceived. Most disturbing to the aliens, human children were playing games based on the alien encounter. They were pretending to be telepathic aliens, but their play showed a complete lack of respect for the established galactic order. In their games, humans and aliens were equals, working together or competing as friends, rather than as master and servant. Their young ones do not learn submission, observed Click Whisper Dream during a report to the Hive Queen. They learn to see aliens as just another type of being to interact with. This suggests their species will never accept telepathic dominance, even if we could overcome their mental defenses. Back on Earth, human scientists were making another important discovery. Dr. Kim J had been studying the recordings of telepathic contact attempts and noticed something that others had missed. The aliens don't just have trouble reading our minds, she announced during a research meeting. They have trouble understanding our motivations and predicting our behavior. Their telepathic abilities aren't just about reading thoughts. They're about imposing their own thought patterns on other species. This revelation changed everything. The aliens hadn't just been trying to read human minds during first contact. They had been trying to reprogram them, to force human thoughts into the same logical patterns that all other galactic species followed. It's not mind reading, Kim J continued. It's mind control. They make other species think like them, which makes those species predictable and manageable. But human minds can't be reprogrammed because our chaos is too fundamental to our nature. This discovery spread through Earth's government and military like wildfire. The aliens weren't just telepathic, they were mental colonizers. Every species in the galaxy had been forced to think in the same way, creating a galactic civilization that was efficient but homogeneous. Humans were the first species the aliens had encountered that could resist this mental colonization. More than that, human mental patterns were so chaotic and creative that they could actually infect telepathic minds with creativity and independence. We're not just immune to their control, realized Bei Wan. The final confrontation began 3 weeks after first contact, when the Telepathic Alliance decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. A massive fleet of over 200 ships approached Earth, carrying the most powerful telepaths in the galaxy and weapons capable of destroying entire planets. But Earth was ready. Ojin stood in the command center, watching the alien fleet approach on the main screen. Around him, hundreds of human volunteers sat in meditation chairs, connected to broadcasting equipment that had been built using a combination of human engineering and alien technology that Earth scientists had reverse engineered. All stations report ready, announced Shinyu. We have 10,000 volunteers in Seoul, 8,000 in New York, 12,000 in London, and teams standing by on every continent. The plan was unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of fighting the alien fleet with weapons, Earth was going to fight them with pure human consciousness. The volunteers would enter stream of consciousness thinking states and broadcast their chaotic mental patterns through modified alien communication systems. Remember, Ojin announced over the global communication network, You don't need to think about anything specific. Just let your minds wander naturally. Think about whatever comes to you. Memories, dreams, random thoughts, emotions. The more chaotic and creative, the better. Park Soo monitored the biological readings from the volunteers. Brain activity is increasing across all sites. Neural patterns are showing maximum creativity and randomness. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, Commander Nexara was preparing for what she expected to be a simple conquest. Her fleet included telepaths from dozens of species, all of whom were confident that their combined mental power could overwhelm any planetary defense. "Begin the telepathic assault," she ordered. But the moment the alien telepaths reached out toward Earth with their minds, they encountered something no military strategist in galactic history had ever planned for. Instead of the organized thoughts of a frightened population, they found themselves bombarded by the concentrated mental chaos of 10,000 humans who were actively trying not to think logically. The volunteer in Seoul named Park Min was thinking about his grandmother's recipe for kimchi, which reminded him of the smell of autumn leaves, which made him remember a song from his childhood, which connected to thoughts about time travel, which led to wondering what color sounds would have if they were visible, which sparked a memory of a dream where he could fly. Multiplied by 10,000 volunteers, these streams of consciousness created a mental storm that hit the telepathic fleet like a tsunami of pure creativity. Alien telepaths, who had never experienced an uncontrolled thought in their lives, were suddenly drowning in human imagination. On the flagship, Elder Korvash tried to maintain the telepathic assault, but his mind was being overwhelmed by human thoughts about everything from quantum physics to childhood pets. "Focus," he commanded his fellow telepaths. "Ignore the chaos and find their command structure." But there was no command structure to find in the human mental broadcasts. The volunteers weren't following orders or thinking strategically. They were simply being human, letting their minds wander through the infinite complexity of human consciousness. Lee Da, one of the volunteers in Seoul, was thinking about the philosophical implications of alien contact, while simultaneously wondering if she had remembered to water her plants that morning and mentally composing a poem about starlight. Her thoughts bounced between these topics randomly, creating connections that no logical mind could follow. The effect on the telepathic fleet was immediate and devastating. Ships began losing coordination as their telepathic communication networks became clogged with human mental static. Navigational systems failed as alien pilots found their concentration broken by streams of human creativity flowing through their minds. "Pull back," Nexara ordered, but her own telepathic abilities were being disrupted by thoughts about Earth music that somehow infiltrated her consciousness. The melodies made no logical sense, but they were beautiful in a way that her rational mind couldn't process. Several alien ships collided with each other as their crews became distracted by human memories of laughter, love, and dreams. The precise formations that telepathic species were famous for dissolved into chaos as individual ship captains began thinking independently for the first time in their lives. On Earth, the human volunteers were experiencing something unexpected as well. As their thoughts were broadcast into space, they began picking up fragments of alien thoughts in return. But instead of being overwhelmed like the aliens, humans found the experience fascinating. Kang Ho, who was coordinating the Seoul team, suddenly found himself seeing the galaxy through alien eyes. He experienced memories of distant worlds, alien cultures, and technologies beyond human imagination. But rather than being confused by this influx of information, his human mind treated it like any other creative input, weaving the alien experiences into his own stream of consciousness. "This is incredible," he reported to the command center. "We're not just disrupting their telepathy, we're learning from it. Our minds are absorbing alien knowledge and adapting it to human ways of thinking." Dr. Yoon Hai monitored the biological effects of the exchange. "Human brain patterns are showing increased complexity," she reported. "The alien mental contact is actually enhancing human creativity rather than hindering it." In space, the opposite was happening to the telepathic fleet. As human thoughts continued to pour into their minds, alien telepaths began experiencing things they had never felt before: curiosity about the unknown, appreciation for art and beauty, and most dangerously of all, questions about the established order of galactic society. A young Mindari telepath named Zenkara found herself wondering why her species had the right to control others. The thought was so alien to her that she at first tried to suppress it, but human mental patterns had taught her mind to follow ideas wherever they led. For the first time in her life, she began to think independently. The same thing was happening throughout the fleet. Telepaths who had spent their lives following orders and maintaining the established hierarchy were suddenly thinking creative thoughts, questioning authority, and imagining alternatives to the way things had always been. "Commander," reported one of Nexara's officers, "our telepaths are requesting permission to make art." "What?" Nexara couldn't believe what she was hearing. "They say the human thought patterns have given them ideas for creating beautiful things. They want to paint, write music, tell stories. I don't understand it myself." Nexara realized with growing horror that the human mental broadcasts weren't just disrupting telepathic abilities. They were spreading human creativity like an infection through the alien fleet. Her perfectly disciplined telepaths were becoming individuals with their own thoughts and desires. On Earth, the volunteers were now doing more than just broadcasting mental chaos. They had begun deliberately sharing human culture and ideas with the aliens. Artists were thinking about masterpieces of human art. Musicians were remembering beautiful songs, and philosophers were contemplating the deepest questions of existence. The effect was transformative. Across the alien fleet, telepaths were experiencing human concepts of freedom, creativity, and individual expression. Many of them began to understand for the first time in their lives that there were other ways to think and live besides the rigid hierarchies they had always known. Elder Korvash made one final attempt to restore order. "All ships, withdraw from telepathic contact with the planet. We will destroy them with conventional weapons." But it was too late. The mental infection of human creativity had spread too far. When he gave the order to attack, more than half of his telepaths refused to obey. "I will not destroy beings who have shown me beauty," declared Zenkara, speaking for many of her fellow telepaths. "These humans have taught me that there is more to existence than following orders." Similar rebellions were breaking out on ships throughout the fleet. Telepaths who had never questioned anything were now questioning everything. The rigid command structure that had held the telepathic alliance together for centuries began to crumble as individuals chose freedom over obedience. On Earth, the human leadership watched in amazement as the alien fleet began to break apart. Ships were leaving formation and heading in different directions as their crews made independent decisions about where to go and what to do. "The alliance is fragmenting," reported Shin Yu. "Multiple alien ships are requesting permission to land on Earth peacefully. They say they want to learn more about human culture and freedom." Some ships, mainly those crewed by non-telepathic species, attempted to continue the attack. But without telepathic coordination, their assault was disorganized and ineffective. Earth's newly developed defenses, enhanced by alien technology that human engineers had creatively modified, were able to repel the scattered attacks. The real victory, however, was not military, but philosophical. The human mental broadcasts had done more than defeat an invasion fleet. They had started a revolution of consciousness that was spreading across the galaxy. Within days, reports began arriving from distant worlds. Telepathically controlled populations were begin during an